Over the next few days, I'm going to tell you how American labor can defeat Trump and win the class war. Today, we're going to talk about the boycott. We are going to stop buying goods and services from Trump donors, boycott alcohol, tobacco, and gambling, cancel unnecessary subscriptions, buy from anti-Trump brands or brands that do not donate at all, and move money out of big banks and into small credit unions and safe investments. A boycott is like a boycott, but it also means reconsidering how you spend your money. This is in order to deny funds to Trump and his allies while also slowing the American economy, stifling corporate profits, and protecting our own individual wealth and interests. It nearly goes without saying that we should refuse to buy from brands that donate to Trump. Some of them, like Home Depot and Fox News, are big and easy to avoid. Others, like the fossil fuel industry, are more difficult to avoid. However, Americans can choose to use less fuel. Boycotting alcohol, tobacco, and gambling could deny billions of dollars to some of the most abusive industries in America while also keeping that wealth in the hands of American labor. Canceling unnecessary subscriptions, Americans spend billions of dollars on streaming services, apps, and AI. Most of it is unnecessary or can be acquired for free. As well, Americans should spend their money on brands that actively resist or at least do not donate to Trump and his collaborators. Aldi has the cheapest groceries in my area, and they don't donate to any political campaigns. Finally, Americans must move their accounts away from big banks and into small credit unions or private holdings. Avoid Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan, Chase, Citigroup, Huntington, and many more like them. These large banks donate to Trump and politicians like him while also rigging the economy against the working class. Small credit unions operate in a way that is more representative of their clients while also being much more numerous than their big bank counterparts. This would help secure and somewhat decentralize American labor's wealth. It would also take that wealth out of the hands of the banks and amplify the power of American labor's investments. Americans who choose to do these things could collectively save themselves millions or billions of dollars while also bringing banks and corporate sponsors to their knees. However, the Trump administration and its wealthy collaborators are devaluing the dollar at a historic rate. So, Americans can't just hold their dollars lest they be robbed by inflation. Instead, Americans should invest at least some of this saved money into inflation-resistant accounts and assets, high-yield savings, land, commodities, and publicly traded stocks. This would grab wealth and power directly away from the wealthiest and pull it into the hands of American labor. In review, we need to stop buying goods and services from Trump donors, boycott alcohol, tobacco, and gambling, cancel unnecessary subscriptions, buy from anti-Trump brands or brands that do not donate at all, and move money out of big banks and into small credit unions and safe investments. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Between 1944 and 1946, millions of Americans participated in thousands of strikes across America. While often each strike had its own local grievances, workers' rights and union representation was a common theme throughout. That is to say, to be clear, the strikes were often in response to unjust firings and for union representation. Millions of American workers decided to stand together and put their careers on the line because their friends got fired or their industry just wasn't addressing their needs. Thus, the most recent precedent was set. For the American people to rise to a general strike, a reason somewhere approaching the severity of systemic worker abuse is enough. So in 2025, does American labor have a grievance which might rise to the level of systemic worker abuse? Well, in January 2017, at CIA headquarters in Langley, President Donald Trump made his first public appearance after inauguration. There, he went on a tirade of petty and self-aggrandizing lies which would prove to become a legacy of malicious lying and delusion that continues to this day. Does the issue of a president who cannot tell a truth rise to the severity of systemic worker abuse? Are the working people of America willing to tolerate a charlatan in their highest office? The truth is that this issue exceeds the precedent set by 1946. as systemic worker abuse is only a symptom of the chronic decay America experiences under the influence of Trump, his collaborators, and the festering of historically destructive decisions like Citizens United. On April 18, 2019, the Mueller report revealed, by Trump and his co-conspirators, widespread corruption and off-the-record espionage activities which could have risen to the level of treason. Unfortunately, Americans were largely complacent about learning the contents of this document, and conservative congressional leaders at the time knew it. They took advantage of their constituents' ignorance and collectively decided that it was appropriate for the President of the United States to compromise national security and enlist the aid of our international opponents to interfere in elections. Again, the precedent of systemic abuse is exceeded, as the security of an entire nation is threatened by a malicious, ignorant, and impulsive executive and his congressional enablers. As long as this situation is allowed to remain, no soldier can honor their oath. Soldiers are trained according to the letter and the spirit of the law. They swear obedience first to the Constitution and then to the President. Furthermore, they swear to protect the country from enemies foreign and domestic. Thus, as long as the President represents a domestic enemy, a soldier cannot both be obedient to the President while also protecting the United States from domestic enemies. Sincerely, I could go on for 10 years listing all of the constant betrayals and failures committed by Trump and the American federal government at large, each of which would rise to the severity of a general strike, in my opinion. However, for the sake of brevity, I will instead only mention the greatest betrayal on all of the American people: inflation. By fixing American wages and using the mechanics of inflation and arbitrage, the wealthy, empowered by an unaccountable federal government, convert American labor into gross excess. Every year this allows them to squander more American effort for their own petty and abusive gain. Every year this allows them to leave less for the workers. Every year Americans die from this vacuous greed. The precedent is completely forgotten. The level of chronic ignorance, ineptitude, corruption, and abuse in 2025 has exceeded this for over a decade, destroyed billions of dollars in wealth, and cost Americans millions of lives. So when is enough enough? Today. Contact your service members and veterans. President Trump and his enablers are currently turning the American military on American citizens. This ultimate betrayal of the American people presents a risk so dire that Americans must attempt to speak sanity into their soldiers. Do they understand what a lawful order is? Do they know what they can do if they've received an unlawful order? Is it possible for a leader without integrity to ever issue a lawful order? Under Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the U.S. Manual for Courts Martial, service members must obey lawful orders and disobey unlawful orders. Unlawful orders violate the Constitution, international human rights, or the Geneva Conventions. Fortunately, it appears roughly 4 out of 5 American soldiers understand how to navigate this issue. This encouraging statistic was recently published by Charlie Carpenter and Geraldine Santoso on military.com. However, we have already seen the Republican and corporate tendency to select for obedient subordinates. In fact, concentrations of these loyalists have already formed within America's police, border and customs agencies, as well as the Department of Homeland Security at large. Often, these units are formed from culturally born ignorance. In some cases, though, they are specifically maintained by fascist leadership. The final line of defense against the destruction of the American experiment is a soldier's duty to refuse unlawful orders. Americans can help improve our resistance to fascism by asking our service-related friends and family if they understand this responsibility. Grimly, it is also important to identify fascist individuals and units who may pose a threat to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In the instance of civil conflict, an ounce of prevention is indeed worth a pound of cure. So today I'm going to read some sections from the Wikipedia articles on caltrops and anti-access and area denial. And then I'm going to share some fun facts about caltrops. A caltrop is an area denial weapon made up of usually 4, but possibly more, sharp nails or spines arranged in such a manner that one of them always points upward from a stable base. Historically, caltrops were part of defenses that served to slow the advances of troops, especially horses, chariots, war elephants, and were particularly effective against the soft feet of camels. In modern times, caltrops are effective when used against wheeled vehicles with pneumatic tires. Anti-access area denial is a military strategy to control access to and within an operating environment. In an early definition, anti-access refers to those actions and capabilities, usually long-range, designed to prevent an opposing force from entering an operational area. Area denial refers to those actions and capabilities, usually of shorter range, designed to limit an opposing force's freedom of action within an operational area. In short, anti-access affects movement to a theater, while area denial affects movement within a theater. Anti-access area denial typically refers to a strategy used by a weaker opponent to defend against an opponent of superior skill, although a stronger opponent can also use anti-access area denial. Anti-access area denial strategy is a significant concern of U.S. policy, viewing it as a weapon of weaker forces that could be used against the U.S. military. The U.S. military considers that enemy adoption of anti-access area denial strategies may well be the most difficult operational challenge U.S. forces will face over the coming decades. And some fun facts about caltrops. Caltrops can be easily and cheaply manufactured with hand tools. With a vise and wrench, even heavy gauge nails can be twisted into the iconic four-pointed star shape. Simply cutting small sections of barbed wire presents a very economical way to produce caltrops. Caltrops are quick and discreet. In fact, caltrops present such discretion that it would be easy for a clumsy person to forget even several thousand of them near a parking garage or even a busy county road. Similar to remote work, caltrops have the ability to enable remote protesting. This actually makes caltrops much safer than blocking the street in person. Caltrops are a family-friendly way to communicate the potential for arson. Getting a caltrop in the foot is 100% effective for waking up sleepy youths. You must vote in the next election. Even if you think it doesn't count, even if you think it's rigged, even if you don't like any of the available options. The vote is not only the process by which the government follows the will of the people, but it is also a method for the people to check our government and society for integrity and authenticity. Democracy is dead when the actions of the government do not reflect the will of the people. If we don't vote, then we won't know if it could have counted. We won't have any evidence to prosecute that it's rigged. And our complacency will only allow our society to sour further. We must vote in unison against Trump, his collaborators, and the leadership that allowed this farce to take place. This means to primary all incumbent Democrats and then voting for their replacements against the Republican and third-party choices. Voting for a third party might be tempting, but unfortunately our democracy is not currently compatible with representing the interests of third-party voters. Put another way, voting for a third party is a waste of time and effort that might actually be worse than not voting at all. I'll say it again. Primary all incumbent Democrats, and then vote for the new Democrats and against Trump and his collaborators. Furthermore, I encourage you to vote by mail. In the United States today, voting by mail is more secure and reliable than voting in person. The methods by which the United States Postal Service tracks, records, and secures your mail and your vote is a process designed to be permanent and resilient. In contrast, the methods by which voting machines are tracked, recorded, and secured is often impermanent and unsecure. For simple contrast, the United States Postal Service vote tallying machines are inside some of the most secure sites in America, while in-person voting machines are in the old church down the street. There is a reason why Trump pleaded for his people to vote by mail, and now that he is president, he is trying to eliminate it. The lines have been crossed. Ignorance, complacency, or misanthropy will not excuse you from the consequences of fascism. Voting might. Over the course of the last 5 videos, I have provided a plan that, if executed, will rebuke fascism and win the class war for the workers. The plan is the boycott, the general strike, the duty to disobey, anti-access area denial, and voting. The boycott is to boycott Trump and his donors, boycott alcohol, tobacco, and gambling, cancel unnecessary subscriptions, and buy from anti-Trump brands or brands that do not donate. Move money out of big banks and into small credit unions and safe investments. The general strike is to organize the working class against the oligarchy, refuse to work for a nation that elevates fraud, human trafficking, and corruption to its highest offices. The duty to disobey. Soldiers cannot honor their oaths as long as a traitor is president. A president who is a domestic enemy makes a soldier's responsibility into an unresolvable contradiction. Until they decide not to participate, every day American soldiers take directions from a fraud and a human trafficker. Mind you, human trafficking is a severe violation of UCMJ that would end the career and effectively the life of any service member. Anti-access area denial is to make your protests have some bite and protect yourself from fascist forces. Voting. Use your right to vote against fascism. If enough of us do this, then we'll either win the election or collect the evidence necessary to justify burning it down. This is the plan. Now it has been spoken into existence. If American workers commit to these ideas, then they will rebuke Trump, fascism, and the oligarchy. I guarantee it. And don't think I'm done yet.